Chapter 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mesopotamia is the ancient Greek name for the region between the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. The Sumerians established numerous city-states here. Uruk was a city located on the right bank of the lower Euphrates River in the south. Today, nearly everyone from the two major power factions has gathered at the palace in Uruk. A grand banquet is being held to celebrate the new king's coronation. Though outwardly respectful, many harbor disapproval and indifference towards the young king, some, even those of high status, openly look down on him. Although he's a king, his power is limited by two major institutions, the Council of Elders and the Citizens' Assembly. Any conflict with these bodies could render him a mere puppet. Humph, that a member of the Council of Elders snorted dismissively, making a move to eat before the king even speaks. His blatant disrespect draws the king's gaze, a seemingly helpless, resigned look. Following the elders' lead, others begin helping themselves to the banquet. To most, the young king is hardly intimidating. A king barely out of his teens poses no real threat. They see him as a kid, probably overwhelmed and confused by his sudden ascension to the throne. "I'd like to propose a toast," the young king announces, trying to sound heroic. Most offer perfunctory acknowledgments. He takes a large gulp from the wine jar, seemingly determined to prove himself despite his youth, but a closer look reveals he barely drinks anything, wasting most of it. No one notices or cares. They simply don't take him seriously. As the banquet wears on, the guests become increasingly drunk and uninhibited, some even making rude comments. "This is our king. He's a joke. Back in my day." Suddenly, someone notices the figure on the throne is asleep. He bursts out laughing. "Already passed out from a few drinks? What a useless brat. We'll be running circles around him. Ha! This taste." A one-eyed man in his 40s, mid-chew, suddenly frowns. The meat tastes strange, leaving a numb, astringent sensation. He can't swallow it. His throat becomes dry and hot, burning as if on fire, making it hard to breathe. Intense nausea follows, and he feels the urge to vomit. He tries to stand but finds his limbs unresponsive. Excruciating pain engulfs him. "Help, help me!" A garbled sound escapes his throat, which feels like it's on fire. His entire body aches. The pain is unbearable. He collapses to the ground. "Ugh!" He vomits violently. Those nearby barely notice, some even teasing him. "Couldn't hold your liquor, huh?" "What? I usually can handle, huh?" He cuts off, his face frozen in shock. The fallen man is foaming at the mouth, convulsing, his eyes rolling back in his head. Definitely not just drunk. Almost immediately, another guest collapses, exhibiting the same symptoms. Thud, thud, thud. One by one, they fall, accompanied by the sounds of overturned furniture and panicked cries. The scene sends a wave of terror through the banquet hall. Those still standing finally realize something is terribly wrong. It's a curse. "Quick, fetch Master Inner." That Master Inner, the high priest, is responsible for communicating with the gods, a figure of immense respect. While they might disrespect the young king, no one would dare disrespect Master Inner. Traditionally, the king also serves as the head of the temple, but the current king is too young, so Master Inner, with his greater prestige, holds the position for now. In a way, Master Inner is the real power in Uruk. Before Master Inner even arrives, more than half the banquet guests have stopped breathing, their hearts still. The sheer horror of the situation compels everyone to flee, desperate to avoid the unknown curse. As chaos reigns, the young king on the throne stirs. He appears perfectly healthy, untouched by the apparent curse. He opens his eyes, surveys the scene, and a look of expectation crosses his face. He shows no fear, almost as if he anticipated this, and indeed, he did. He's the one responsible for the carnage. A mocking smile, too knowing for his age, plays on his lips. "So, these people weren't really cursed?" "No. They simply drank wine laced with processed red arsenic powder. They were poisoned." "Very good. I wonder how the system sees this." Current progress, 65%. Oh. Up 10% from 55%. A card emitting a faint golden light appears in his vision. The card, seemingly petrified, is now 65% complete. It features a character, a young boy with blonde hair and red eyes. A rebellious king, One who believed himself the only one in heaven and earth, a king who hated the gods. Yes, this is the king of heroes. Gilgamesh, wielder of Enkidu. Chapter 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gilgamesh, the hero king, Gilgamesh, wielder of the Gate of Babylon. Once the system recognizes his role at 100%, he can completely unlock this card, then, he can use it to empower himself. As a result, he'll gain all the abilities that Gilgamesh possesses in the moonlit world. Actually, he already is Gilgamesh, just newly crowned king of this city-state. Before, he was just a regular office drone, just like everyone else. His life was a daily grind of work, commute, home. A true cog in the machine, girlfriend. Forget about it, too much hassle to keep a real girlfriend happy. Better to have a waifu on the screen. Then one day, he was just chilling, completely still, body cold, and ended up in the morgue. He was at home on his day off, binging Fate, when the TV went haywire. Some cheap manufacturers had skimped on the parts. Smoke poured out, and it started to burn. Apparently, it happened when some character used their ultimate move, flashing the screen during an especially intense scene. It was like the animation characters were about to blast their way into the real world. He rushed to unplug it, but got zapped flat by the electricity. He woke up to find himself in ancient Sumer, 2000 BC, reincarnated as Gilgamesh. He didn't freak out too much. His old life was pretty much over, and since he grew up in an orphanage, he didn't have any attachments. So what if he was dead? In a way, he'd time-traveled, right? So, where were the usual cheat codes and golden tickets that time travelers get in novels? Gotta be something, right? Yep, a role-playing system. If he could just play the part convincingly enough to earn a 100% system rating, he could unlock the card. Of course, playing the part well didn't necessarily mean hitting all the same plot points as Gilgamesh. As long as his actions were comparable and future generations could view them in roughly the same way, that would be enough. Generally, sticking to the storyline was the safest bet, and the system provided recordings for reference. Otherwise, if he created a butterfly effect or something, and he ended up erased from history, the performance would fail, and he'd never become the king of heroes. So, he constantly monitored the performance recognition progress bar. A sudden drop meant he'd screwed up, an increase meant he was on the right track. What could cause a performance failure? Easiest answer: death, either getting killed during the performance or dying of old age/illness before completing the progress. And the result of failure? True death. Nope. The system would just drop him into another role-playing scenario. The era and the next character would change. Who would he be next? The system wasn't telling. He'd probably only find out upon failure or success, or he could try to figure it out after waking up again. So, was his current act of poisoning two major institutions based on the story direction from the system? Not exactly. It was a choice he made. Even with the story direction, no matter how closely he followed it, there would be deviations. And why the deviations? It boiled down to factors like his words and deeds. For example, the system's record might say Gilgamesh went hunting one day and had a conflict with someone, but it wouldn't specify the exact time, the severity of the conflict, or what actually happened. He had to fill in the blanks, which was kinda rough. Maybe the original conflict was just a minor annoyance, but if he lost control in this new version, it could escalate. The other guy might even want to kill him. That's the deviation. Therefore, all sorts of deviations had led to the current situation, forcing him to take risky actions like this. So, what kind of world was this? An ordinary one? No, this world seemed to have gods, so, he hadn't landed in the Fate universe, right? Would he become a heroic spirit someday? If it was that universe, wouldn't the rewards be kind of redundant? Suddenly, a jumble of noises snapped him back to reality. It was Ner, the high priest who claimed to talk to God. Coming closer, the high priest stood frozen at the door, too terrified to enter after seeing the carnage. When he noticed the figure on the throne, chin in hand, watching him with amusement, a chill shot down his spine. Foreigner, the scene was just too bizarre. Faced with such a tragedy, the king was so calm, his smile was sending shivers down his spine. It made him think that the king was behind this massacre. This young king, who used to seem so harmless, had so much cunning that he'd wiped out nearly everyone in the two major power factions. King, what? what happened here? Awe tinged his voice, making it sound timid. Nothing much. They were being a pain, trying to use me like a puppet. So, I cursed them to death. He said it casually, propping his elbow on the throne's armrest, chin resting on his hand. At the same time, blue flames flickered into existence beside him, adding to the weirdness. The performance made her break out in a cold sweat. This young king definitely had something going on. Some incredible power. A curse that kills? What kind of curse could do that? Lord Honor, you don't think the same way as these people, do you? The king tilted his head slightly, looking down on him with cold arrogance. He seemed to radiate a palpable power, making it hard to breathe. No, he denied it quickly, terrified that he'd be cursed to death if he hesitated. Good. And Gilgamesh appeared, waiting for the unknown future when the gods would hold a meeting that would decide the future of humanity, whether it would be destroyed or allowed to continue. Chapter 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A steady rhythm of footsteps echoed through the hall, hurried but sure. The woman leading the way wore a serious expression. Her long, glossy black hair was adorned with a wing-shaped ornament. Her face was strikingly beautiful, almost heroic, needing no makeup to enhance its features. She was tall and dressed in a knight-like dress. She carried herself with the bearing of someone who'd seen battle, radiating an aura of controlled aggression. She resembled a Valkyrie of legend, because she was one, Brunhilde, the eldest of the 13 Valkyrie sisters from Norse mythology. Behind her, footsteps echoed, faster and lighter, almost a trot to keep up. The girl following her appeared to be about 13 or 14, with short, light purple hair, large emerald green eyes, and a delicate, cherry-red mouth. Petite and cute, she wore what seemed to be normal casual clothes, but her black knee-high socks under her shorts seemed designed to highlight her individuality. This girl was also a Valkyrie, Grey, the youngest of the sisters. They were heading toward the ornate and imposing building before them, the Valhalla Council meeting hall. Grey felt a shiver of unease. Sister Brund had balled her small pink fist in front of her chest. She feared that Brund, whom she admired most, was about to do something outrageous. The members of the Valhalla Council were on a completely different level. The Valkyries, in a sense, weren't even qualified to enter. They were only demigods in the Council of Gods. Today's Valhalla Council meeting, held only once every 1,000 years, would decide the fate of humanity. It seemed her sister was going there specifically for this meeting. Grey had overheard snippets of information, rumors that a final judgment was imminent. Her sister, a Valkyrie with ties to humanity, couldn't stand idly by. Grey didn't want that judgment to happen either, but what could she do? She was just a demigod, the youngest Valkyrie, a trainee. Too weak to make a difference. The closer they got to the Valhalla Council meeting hall, the more nervous she became. The place was filled with heavy hitters. Her sister walked into the passage without a second thought. Biting her lip, she hurried after her. What was happening inside the Valhalla Council meeting hall at that very moment? Inside the meeting hall. Everyone, 1,000 years have passed since our last assembly, an old voice began. The speaker was a frail old man in a white robe who looked as if a strong breeze could knock him over. He was presiding over the meeting as the speaker of the Council of Gods, Valhalla Council, Zeus, the chief god of Greek mythology. Now begins the meeting of the gods of the world, concerning the survival of mankind. As he spoke, his narrowed eyes, usually hidden by thick eyebrows, opened, revealing a sharp gaze. Shall humanity be allowed to continue for another 1,000 years? Or shall we bring it to an end? That was the question at hand. Every 1,000 years, the gods convened such a meeting and voted on whether to grant humanity another millennium. Humanity faced threats not just from meteor strikes, nuclear war, and alien invasions, but also from the gods themselves. Gods, please give your opinions. After Zeus's words, the room didn't erupt into chaos. Instead, it was filled with a sense of lethargy. Yeah, let's just end it. The first to speak was a lazy voice. He lay sprawled out. Shiva, one of the 3 main gods of India, and the god of destruction and creation, he lazily held up a sign with an X on it, signifying the end. They haven't shown any intention of improving themselves in the last 1,000 years, so why not just destroy them all? Lord Shiva is right. The world has only become uglier in the past 1,000 years. The oceans are filled with garbage. The second god to respond was Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, exuding allure. She agreed with destruction because humans were making the world worse. The other gods echoed these sentiments, critical of mankind. No one spoke in humanity's defense, and everyone voted for its end. Human beings are a plague on this world. Let humanity become extinct. They're just pests. I'm tired of guiding them. Hopeless. Let them be destroyed. The gods were utterly disappointed with humanity and no longer intended to give it another chance. They planned to declare humanity's end in this very room. It seems we've reached a conclusion. Zeus, the presiding officer, raised the gavel of judgment, ready to declare the end of mankind. Therefore, at this conference on the survival of humanity, everyone unanimously agrees to grant humanity. Please wait, that a dissenting voice rang out. It was Brunhild. Undeterred by the glares of the gods, she stood tall, determined to stop them from ending mankind. She cited Article 62, Item 15 of the Valhalla Constitution, a one-on-one duel between gods and humans, advocating for a tournament of 13 gods against 13 humans, God vs humanity's final struggle. If humans won 7 matches first, they would survive until the next Human Survival and Death Conference. She baited the gods, implying they were afraid of losing to humans if they refused the challenge. The gods, incensed, accepted her proposal. Eager to see humans humiliated, she was tasked with finding the 13 human champions. 13 humans, that with the fate of humanity resting on these 13 individuals, she couldn't afford to choose the wrong people. Brunhild had already selected her first target, Adam, blessed by God at birth. As Brunhild prepared to summon him, she overheard a secret unknown to the gods, passing by a group of Babylonian gods. A shocking secret: someone had successfully killed a god. The slain god wasn't just any ordinary god. Chapter 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Has anyone ever really killed a god? Is it even possible? It's mind-blowing to think about. Brunhild considered it a fantasy, pure and simple. Impossible, so why propose Ragnarok, a showdown between gods and humans, if it's a lost cause? Did she seriously believe humans could actually kill gods, that she had some secret sauce? Let's be real, humans can't kill gods. No matter how tough they are, it's not happening. The only reason she thought humans might stand a chance in Ragnarok was because of something else up her sleeve. Without that ace in the hole, humanity is doomed. No way they'd beat the gods. That's why overhearing the Babylonian gods spill their secrets was so shocking. If humans have actually managed to kill a god, how come almost nobody in the pantheon knows about it? Why just the Babylonians? From the few words she caught, Brunhild could piece together the gist of it: simple, embarrassment. Massive, can't even talk about it. Embarrassment, a mighty god getting taken out by a human. Talk about a joke. The ultimate pantheon shame. And to make it worse, the victim was a big shot. Other pantheons would never let them live it down, so, the Babylonians kept it hush-hush. As for the god-slayer, divine justice took care of him. He was Gilgamesh, one of the 3 great Sumerian heroes, and the 5th king of Uruk. The Epic of Gilgamesh paints him as the son of the goddess Nin-Sun, a demigod with insane strength, basically, a demigod, like Brunhild herself. But was any of it true? Brunhild was starting to question the official story. The gods' version of the last 7 million years of human history is full of holes anyway, some of it clearly just gossip. Being gods, they don't feel the need to get all the human details right. It's an arrogance thing. So, which god did Gilgamesh of? Anu, the main god of the Babylonian pantheon. Hard to wrap your head around the top god getting killed by a human, right? What went down? Brunhild, now plugged into the Akashic records, brought up the divine system for recording human history. Time to search. First keyword: humans kill gods. Whoa. Tons of results popped up. Humans killing gods all the time. No way. She clicked on one of the virtual imaging folders to see what kind of god killing it was. Oh, that kind. Not what she was thinking. Turns out, some humans get a big head, start calling themselves gods, comparing themselves to the divine, and get taken out. hence, God-killing. Every single result was basically the same deal. Okay, new search, Gilgamesh. Relevant documents appeared. She skimmed them. Mostly the same stuff she already knew. Sister Brund, I'm back, that the door burst open with a cheerful voice. It was her youngest sister. Her sister checked to make sure no one was following, then carefully closed the door. Well, Brunhild shot Gray a quick glance. She'd sent her sister on a mission to dig up some dirt. I got the goods. Lord Anu, head honcho of the Babylonian pantheon, has missed 4 meetings about humanity's survival. Point 4 absences. Meaning, started after Gilgamesh's supposed reign. Heh. Brunhild bit her thumb, a smile creeping across her face. If the intel she had was true, why hadn't she ever seen this King Gilgamesh in the Hall of Valor? She only knew the name, not the person. Sure, rumor had it he was too arrogant to meet anyone, but nobody seeing him for thousands of years. Something didn't add up. Also, if Gilgamesh was really a demigod like her, he wouldn't be eligible for the Hall of Valor, which meant he couldn't be one of the 13 human fighters. So, if the reports were BS, and Gilgamesh was human, he would be in the running for those 13 slots, and a human who could kill a god. Brunhild would snatch him up in a heartbeat. With someone like that on their side, humanity would have a serious edge. Thinking about it. Ha 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 ha. Brunhild couldn't help but laugh. Envisioning gods getting wrecked in front of a packed house at Ragnarok. Epic, what a rush. Sister Brund, what? Gray, being the youngest, jumped at her sister's sudden laughter. Her big sister's boldness terrified her sometimes, even mocking the gods. It was insane. Nothing, just feeling good. So good, she couldn't wait to see the look on the gods' faces. Good? Yep. We might have just found the first human who can kill gods. Those blasphemous words made Gray break out in a cold sweat. Sister, please keep it down. Shoo, quiet, Sister Brund. But Sister Brund was saying she found the first human who can kill gods. Humans can kill gods. What a joke. Let's go, Gray. Where to? To meet the king, of course. A pop-up window appeared with a photo and info. Wait, going to the Hall of Valor? Nah, screw that era, that they wouldn't find him in the Hall of Valor. Brunhild was going back in time to see the truth for herself, to watch this hero king slay a god. Chapter 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. His eyes locked on the priest, and despite the fear crawling up his spine, a smirk played on his lips. Bayou frowned, a sudden, unsettling feeling washing over him. It was like being watched. The sensation wasn't malicious, exactly, but deeply unsettling. Someone was spying on him. He narrowed his eyes, scanning the scene where the cleanup was underway. Who was it? Indeed, he was being observed. Some of the soldiers hauling corpses couldn't resist sneaking glances at him. When his gaze met theirs, they immediately ducked their heads, bodies trembling. They were terrified of him, afraid he'd suddenly curse them to their deaths. Fear was a great tool for control. No, terror was the better word. Terror was an excellent means of governance. He continued to scan the area, unable to pinpoint the source of the feeling, but the sense of being watched persisted. It was as if the person was standing right in front of him, openly staring, yet he couldn't see them. Close, they were quite close. Where? To the right? Feigning nonchalance, he stood, drawing his sword and casually wiping the blade with a cloth, as if idly playing with it. Sis, Brunhilde. Gray was panicking. The ruler of Uruk, the Sumerian hero king, was right there. They were so close, she could practically reach out and touch him, and this king, whose cruelty was well documented, was polishing his sword to a blinding sheen right in front of her. She worried he might suddenly strike. Has he spotted us? Brunhilde, responding to her sister's question, nodded with a flicker of interest and said, maybe. Now that she was here, standing face to face with the king, Brunhilde was certain he was human. She sensed no divine aura about him, meaning he wasn't the son of the goddess Nin Song as the legends claimed. Therefore, Gilgamesh wasn't a demigod with superhuman strength. he was just a man. It was truly fascinating that he'd used the red-letter stone to poison the council of elders and most of the citizens. In this era, when something like that happened and he pretended to use phosphorus fire, they could only assume he'd cast some kind of curse. He used that mystique to create an aura of terror. Ah! Whoa! Gray gasped, startled by her sister's words, and quickly clapped a hand over her mouth. The next second, a flash of cold steel, the man had already attacked, leaping across the space. In Gray's periphery, a nearby shelf was struck and began to collapse. Aya, is my head still attached? Gray screamed, frantically patting her head with her small hands. It was still there. She touched her neck, finding no wound, still connected. Why the scream? Because the bronze blade had flashed past, slicing right through where her neck would be. More accurately, the sweeping strike had first bisected Brunhilde, then passed through where her neck should have been. The next second, Gray turned pale again. Her scream had apparently caught the other man's attention. With a powerful flick of his wrist, the bronze blade plunged into the ground right in front of her, before she could even react. Ugh! Just as she was about to scream again, Gray clamped both hands over her mouth. There was no doubt about it. This brutal king of heroes could somehow sense them. Only because she remained silent did the king of heroes' gaze finally move away. As soon as he looked away, Gray's tense body sagged, and she nearly collapsed to the ground, her legs weak. She was scared witless. She looked up to see Brunhilde still standing calmly, unmoved. The reason his attack was like cutting through air, unable to affect them, was because they existed outside his time and space. It was like watching a holographic movie. If the characters in the movie suddenly attacked you, it would be meaningless. They couldn't touch reality. Of course, because it was a filmed movie, they couldn't alter its content, therefore, they couldn't change established history. They were simply watching a movie about Gilgamesh. If history could be changed, the gods of the Babylonian pantheon wouldn't have needed to travel through time and space to rescue their slain main god, but history couldn't be altered at will. It was a rule set by the gods. In reality, history could be changed, but resurrecting the dead main god was impossible. The main god had been utterly killed, his soul shattered. That was an established fact of cause and effect, and methods like resurrection, reincarnation, and time travel were all useless. He was utterly gone, reduced to cosmic dust. So, how had this hero king killed Anu, the main god of the Babylonian pantheon? Could her sister have misheard? Let's go, Gray. Ah. Go where? Gray asked in a hushed voice, shrinking behind her sister. To the time when the bull of heaven was slain. The goddess Ishtar, captivated by Gilgamesh's charm, had offered herself to him, only to be rejected. Enraged, the goddess had asked her father, Anu, to send the bull of heaven, which brought drought to the land, to avenge her. Yet Gilgamesh still managed to kill it. So how had he done it? The bull of heaven was considered unkillable by humans. To be precise, by humans of that era, modern human weaponry would likely be capable of killing the bull of heaven. She, Brunhilde, would take a good look at the king's power. As for whether she truly believed the king had killed the main god, now that Brunhilde had accessed the Akasha and used the system, she believed there was a high probability it was true. Normally, she wouldn't have been able to access this system and investigate any pantheon of human history. The proposal for a duel between humans and gods, Ragnarok, had granted her permission to unlock and view the entire history. Therefore, when entering the history of the King of Heroes, she discovered it was locked, meaning any pantheon who wanted to view it needed the Babylonian pantheon's consent. However, since she had been granted direct access to observe human history related to the entire pantheon of gods, she no longer needed authorization from the Babylonian pantheon. Was the King of Heroes' historical record locked on purpose? There was definitely a secret to it. Chapter 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uruk was buzzing with life. The whole city was a riot of celebration, the biggest anyone could remember. The horn blared, and the crowds parted, clearing the way. Triumphant, the army marched through the city gates. Initial distrust and unease had morphed into fear and, finally, outright worship. Their king, Gilgamesh, was returning. Since ascending to the throne, Gilgamesh had implemented sweeping changes, sparking Uruk's rapid growth. Agriculture boomed, transforming the city into the region's breadbasket. Trade flourished, further boosting the nation's wealth. Military reforms led to the development of groundbreaking weaponry. Then, Aga, the arrogant king of Kish, one of the most powerful kingdoms, demanded that Gilgamesh provide free labor to dig wells and build canals. He threatened war if his demands weren't met. Gilgamesh called his bluff. Initially, everyone expected Kish to crush Uruk, but Uruk's army steamrolled over Kish's seemingly invincible empire. Uruk's soldiers were better equipped than Kish's elite guard, the king of Kish's own personal protectors. What was standard gear for Uruk's troops was top of the line for Kish. Uruk's archers, in particular, were terrifying. Their arrows were incredibly sharp and flew farther than anyone had ever seen. Only metal shields could offer any real defense, and then there were the siege engines. These massive machines allowed Uruk's soldiers to scale city walls with ease, leading to Kish's swift downfall. Now, with the army's victorious return, Kish was under Uruk's thumb. The expeditionary force of over 4,000 suffered only 500 casualties, while Kish lost over 2,000. Is that? Yep, that's King Aga of Kish. No doubt about it, that a disheveled man sat slumped in a prison cart. Despite his miserable appearance, he still carried himself with an air of authority. Behind him, on an ornate chariot, sat a man surveying the crowd with a godlike arrogance. Their king, Gilgamesh. The people roared their approval, celebrating the leader who had made Uruk the most powerful city in the land. King Aga of Kish was brought to Uruk's execution platform to meet his end. Meanwhile, in the temple tower, something was amiss. Where the statue of the goddess Ishtar, patron of the temple priests, once stood, there was now nothing. A few years ago, this would have sent Uruk into a panic. But under Gilgamesh's rule, and through a clever propaganda campaign, the people no longer held the gods in such high esteem. Increasingly, they saw Gilgamesh as a god himself, using his divine wisdom to bring wealth and power to Uruk. As the king prepared to speak from his throne, a soldier rushed in. Lagash, you are, and Nippur are marching on Uruk. A cruel smile spread across the faces in the hall. Perfect. They're practically handing themselves to us. No more need for excuses. Uruk's expansionist ambitions were no secret. And these surrounding cities handed them the perfect opportunity. Of course, these countries also expected Uruk, because Uruk grabs took away most of their business. King, I volunteer to take Lagash. Ur is mine. Nippur belongs to me. Hey, hold on. What's left for the rest of us? No, I should lead the attack on Lagash. I know their defense is best. The hall erupted in argument. Enough. Gilgamesh's drawled command silenced the room. You will take Lagash, you are, and you Nippur. I expect results. No one dared question the king's decision. The outcome was as predictable as sunrise. The armies of Lagash, Ur, and Nippur were crushed. In the blink of an eye, these three nations were under Uruk's control. 90%. The progress bar read 90%, only a small part of the image remained petrified, but that 90% had been reached before the conquests of Lagash, Ur, and Nippur, and it hadn't budged since. What was missing? Enkidu. He was nowhere to be found. The incident with the divine bull. That involved Ishtar, the goddess Uruk once worshipped. Did gods really exist? It wasn't clear, but he'd felt watched several times, likely by one of them. One thing he was sure of, this wasn't the world of Xingyue. Suddenly, a woman materialized before him. She was scantily clad, and her gaze was condescending. She looked at him as if he were a new pet. It was a look so unpleasant he wanted to claw her eyes out. Could this be Ishtar? Confronting her would be risky, and he only had one shot. That shot was the reward he would receive when progress reached 50%. Chapter 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The woman who appeared was indeed the goddess Ishtar, goddess of nature and the harvest, but also the goddess of love, fertility, and war. She had been observing the mortal realm and couldn't help but be drawn to Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk. Seeing him up close only intensified her attraction. Blonde hair, red eyes, he was handsome, rivaling even the male gods. He exuded a unique dominance and arrogance, unlike any human she had ever encountered. It was an aura so potent, it seemed to dwarf even that of a god. He remained unfazed, sitting calmly as if nothing extraordinary was happening. Ishtar, emphasizing her divine presence, struck a pose and purred, "I am the goddess of nature and harvest, Ishtar." "So," the king of Uruk, still lounging on his throne, responded with a bored tone. He showed no shock, fear, or excitement at her divine revelation. Ishtar was momentarily taken aback. Did he not believe her? Well, she would convince him. A golden aura surrounded her, and barley, wheat, and lentils sprouted from the stone floor, a miracle impossible without her divine power. "This proves I am the goddess of nature and harvest, Ishtar." "So what?" "Ishtar, goddess of nature and harvest, what do you want from me?" His attitude remained unchanged, addressing her as if she were an ordinary person. A flicker of displeasure crossed Ishtar's face. She was a goddess, and he, though a king, was still just a mortal. To treat her with such indifference, yet, his audacity only fueled her fascination. "It's simple. I desire you. Become my partner, king of Uruk, and transcend your mortal limits. Become a demigod with an extended lifespan." Goddesses rarely offer such a proposition to humans. No mortal could resist such an offer, a chance to become a demigod and escape the inevitable end of human life. The king of Uruk finally straightened up, his eyes gleaming with interest. "Didn't I hear you had a thing with a certain god? And weren't some humans you invited over also part of that story?" "Those are irrelevant now, king of Uruk. My affections are now solely for you." She assumed he was simply insecure. Ishtar leaned in, exuding her alluring charm. "Oh. So, you've really been around the block?" "Sorry, not my thing. I don't do public transportation." She expected to enthrall him, but his words caused her face to contort with rage. She didn't understand the slang, but sensed a deep insult. The king of Uruk dismissed her with a disdainful wave of his hand, as if brushing off something unclean. Ishtar's face twisted, veins pulsing on her forehead. Someone couldn't contain their laughter, quickly covering their mouth. It was Gray, the youngest of the Valkyries. The king of Uruk's retort was too cutting. Did he really just say he didn't do public transportation? Hilarious. Wait, was that a modern joke? How did it surface in Cimmeria? Whoa. The king of Uruk suddenly fixed her with a sharp glare. No, he sensed them again. Gray cowered behind Brunhild, terrified. They were still in a pocket of displaced time, invisible to ordinary gods. "You don't know what public transportation means." "You human Gilgamesh," the goddess Ishtar snarled, her beautiful face distorted, demanding the meaning of his words. She no longer addressed him as king of Uruk, but spat his name with venom. "You don't understand. Let me enlighten you. Public transportation is a vehicle facilitating commuting. Anyone can ride for a small fee. I, however, prefer a custom-built king's chariot, cleaner and more comfortable. If you crave the public transportation experience, I can arrange a driver to show you around Uruk city." Gray winced, worried for the king of Uruk. Ishtar's beautiful face was now a demonic mask, her twisted claws looked poised to tear him apart. He, ha 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 ha, very well, Gilgamesh. She screamed, her voice raw with fury, sending shivers down Gray's spine. "Oh no, Sister Brunhild, King Gilgamesh is in serious trouble." "No, she won't kill him directly. Gods typically don't kill humans with their own hands. It was seen as arrogant, inviting mockery from other gods. Instead, they orchestrate indirect punishments, relishing the suffering from afar." Brunhilde narrowed her eyes, detecting something else, a dangerous glint in Gilgamesh's eyes, hinting at a desire to try something. Killing gods. Where did he get that confidence? Wait. You will regret your actions today. With those menacing words, the goddess Ishtar vanished. On the throne, the corners of the king's mouth twitched upwards. The progress bar now read 95%, by the way, if he had acted, and Ishtar had actually been killed, would the percentage have risen higher, to 99%? So, sending the bull of heaven to deal with him was next, right? Chapter 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the farmlands outside Uruk, the irrigation systems were extensive, and the soil rich enough to feed the city. Under the rule of Uruk's great king, famine was unheard of, but then, the farmers tending their crops glanced at the sun, confusion etching their faces. Why is it gettin' so damn hot today? And it wasn't just the sun. The heat was coming from the south, rising from the ground. Looking that way, the air shimmered and distorted. Squinting, they noticed something was wrong with the crops in that direction. They were turning dark, withering, their eyes widened as they spotted smoke curling up from the ground, then flames. What the hell was going on? The heat slammed into them, a suffocating wave that nearly made them pass out. The crops all around withered and died. Then, they saw it, something huge and wild tearing across the field. A bull? That it was a bull, but unlike any bull they'd ever seen before. Bigger, fiercer, and as it drew closer, the temperature soared. The ground trembled beneath its hooves. It was clear then, the abnormal heat was coming from this beast. Soldiers tried to stop it, but they were no match. They were drenched in sweat before they even got close, collapsing from the heat. Back in Uruk, atop the temple tower, a figure noticed the billowing smoke outside the city walls. It looked like the bull of heaven had been unleashed. What's happening? An attack? Looks like it's in the farming district. Fire? Where are the guards? The figure raised a hand, silencing the murmuring elders. He descended from the temple, climbed into a waiting chariot, and headed for the south gate where the smoke was thickest. Before he even reached the gate, soldiers rushed in with reports. Could that be Gugalana, the legendary bull of heaven? The mythical beast of the sky god Anu? Did Ishtar ask Anu to send down divine punishment? That thing brings drought. Reaching the city wall, the people stared in terror at the rampaging beast, destroying crops and bringing the threat of drought. Some trembled, and others wanted to fall to their knees. This is the goddess Ishtar's punishment. Kneel and beg for forgiveness. Beg for what? A flash of steel. The speaker's head flew from his shoulders, thudding onto the ground. Anyone who kneels shares his fate. Red eyes narrowed, burning like evil stars. The elders and nobles who met his gaze shrank back, straightening their bent knees. Answer me this, who made Uruk wealthy and powerful these last few years? The king spread his arms, addressing the soldiers, all eyes focused on him. It's the king. It's the king of Uruk. It's King Gilgamesh. The shout swelled, a chorus of voices hailing their king. Yes, it's me. But I haven't received any divine revelations. Everything you have, I, a human, brought to you. Not some god. And this creature destroying everything we've built is supposedly sent by that god. The soldiers fell silent, some trembling. This was anger building. Do you know why this god does this? Because the goddess, no, the slut Ishtar, in her ridiculousness, wants me to be her slave. And I told her to go to hell. The soldiers stirred again, this time not in panic, but in outrage. Understand? This is what the so-called gods are. If they were truly good, would they demand sacrifices? Have you ever actually seen a god give us anything? They want to take our dignity, our freedom, our very lives. Is that really a god? Tell me, is that a god? No. 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 Then what are they? Tell me. Evil gods. Devils. In an instant, the soldiers, the residents, even the elders and nobles were swept up in the fervor, roaring with rage. The angry voices seemed to shake the very air, making the bull of heaven hesitate. Devils. Evil. Gray, startled, covered her mouth. This was overwhelming. The sheer force of Gilgamesh's presence as king was contagious. Even she felt it. She knew that the people of Sumer were traditionally devout, but now, most seemed to have lost their fear of the gods. How had they been so thoroughly convinced? Sister Brund, how will King Gilgamesh defeat the bull of heaven? That the bull of heaven wasn't at its full strength. For some reason it was suppressed to a certain extent, maybe to avoid causing too much impact and alarming the gods from other pantheons, but even in this state, it was more than a match for anyone in this era. You're asking me? How should I know? Just keep watching and you'll find out. Brynhild was also curious about Gilgamesh's plan. Gilgamesh gave instructions to a few guards, who ran back toward the temple. It seemed Gilgamesh had ordered them to prepare something beforehand, and now it was time for the final touches. Brynhild didn't know what he had asked them to prepare, since they had skipped over those events when the goddess appeared. It was like skipping ahead in a movie, so they were missing some of the details. The temple is evacuating the nearby residents. Almost half the city is being evacuated. A gate opened beneath the massive pyramid-like temple. It was a sturdy storage room, sometimes used as a place of refuge. Was he going to let the residents take shelter there? Of course not. Otherwise, the residents wouldn't be moved so far from the temple. Could he be planning to lure the bull of heaven inside and lock it up? Even if the walls were thicker than the city walls, it wouldn't hold for long. The bull would smash right through, so, to what extent can we seriously injure or even kill the bull of heaven? If they had the power to blast the pyramid-like temple into ruins, they should be able to kill the bull. Wait, could it be? Brynhild stared in disbelief. Does that guy really understand that? Chapter 9. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After wiping out the crops, they finally stormed the city. It was a tough situation. He could punch the city wall, but he could only dent it. Weapons barely made a dent. They could scratch the thick hide, but it healed fast, and the weapons of that time? Useless. He'd crush them instantly, but he could hurt this bull of heaven pretty bad, so he figured his goal was to kill this drought-bringing beast. As for him claiming he could punch through a city wall, that'd take a modern tank. No human could do that, right? Not normally. This was another perk from his system. The more he completed his role, the stronger he became, or, maybe not stronger, but it unlocked his body's hidden potential. Come on, you dumb cow! He was perched on the temple tower throne, taunting the bull that was now enraged and charging after him. Hot air blasted from its nostrils as it pawed the ground, ready to charge. Then, with a heavy thud, the bull of heaven lunged forward, shaking the ground. Every step cracked the stone slabs beneath its hooves. In an instant, the distance between them halved. He smirked, and then pressed a lever on the throne. Like a hidden mechanism, the floor where the bull of heaven was about to land suddenly gave way, sending it plummeting to the bottom of the pyramid-like temple. An angry roar echoed from below, followed by a surge of terrifying energy. Looking down into the collapsed hole, you could see flames erupting, like a volcano about to blow. Boom! The explosion was louder than thunder, and it rocked Uruk to its core. People reeled, heads ringing, staring in disbelief at the temple, the king's palace, engulfed in flames. Rubble flew everywhere, but the area had been evacuated on the king's orders, so there were few injuries. What was that? The people of Uruk, clueless, thought it was divine punishment and panicked. Brynhild, what's happening? Gray, terrified by the explosion, asked, making sure she was okay first. She was on the city wall now, having been moved, staring dumbfounded at the explosion. Dust explosion. Guess you weren't paying attention in class, huh? Dust explosion? She vaguely remembered the term, but hadn't grasped the concept. I didn't think he'd actually use that, Brynhild said, impressed. The opening at the bottom was for ventilation, circulating air inside, not just one opening, but several, ensuring plenty of air in the enclosed space. Then, they pumped wheat flour into the space, and when the bull of heaven was lured up, they sealed the vents. When it fell, its heat ignited the airborne powder. The rapid combustion created a massive pressure surge, resulting in the earth-shattering explosion. As the smoke cleared, King Gilgamesh emerged. The explosion had taken its toll. He must have braced for the impact, or he might have been killed. Then, something began pushing against the collapsed rubble behind him. A mangled monster crawled out, riddled with metal fragments. Its bloodshot eyes locked on King Gilgamesh, and it lurched forward, trying to impale him with its remaining horn. But King Gilgamesh didn't turn, didn't flinch. Was he too injured to move? No, the bull of heaven was barely moving. It slowed down as it approached, its eyes slowly closing. It collapsed a yard behind him. The people of Uruk, who had been worried, cheered. That was their king's power. Set up a huge cauldron for me, the king announced, met with a roar of approval, and so, the bull of heaven was cooked for 10 days and 10 nights. On that day, the god who noticed something was wrong, arrived. The starry night turned starless, black clouds churned, and tornadoes touched down, as if the end of the world was at hand. The sky god of the Babylonian pantheon, Anu, Brynhild murmured, looking at the raging sky. Sky god, Lord Anu. The main god. Should we hide? Gray cowered behind her sister, uneasy. Ordinary gods might miss them, but not the main god. No need. His gaze fixed on the figure on the throne, unafraid, he smirked, a smile that sent chills down Brynhild's spine. His ferocity seemed to light up the night. His ruby eyes blazed, a murderous intent smoldering in his gaze. He wanted to kill the gods. Brynhild was excited and terrified. She would witness humanity kill a god. Chapter 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Anu, the sky god and chief deity in Babylonian mythology, rarely descended to the lower realms, preferring his celestial abode. He sat motionless on his temple throne, slowly opening eyes that flashed with an unnatural light, like a gathering storm of electricity. It's been 10 days since Ishtar borrowed Gugalana, he mused. Why hasn't she returned him? Anu knew Ishtar's intent, to punish humanity for their insolence. Granted, they spoke the truth, he thought, but what right do mortals have to scorn a god? Thus, he lent Ishtar the bull of heaven to discipline the arrogant humans and remind them of divine power. Still, it was time to rein in Ishtar's recklessness, lest she trespass into other gods' domains and cause interpantheon ridicule. Recall Gugalana, he commanded. Anu sent the order, but then paused. Huh? What's this? I can't reach him. It wasn't disobedience, but a disconnect, as if Gugalana existed outside his reach. He frowned, fearing Ishtar had gone too far. This could be problematic. With a wave, a screen materialized, displaying Gugalana's designated punishment zone. The image sharpened, revealing the majestic human city of Uruk. What? A collapsed temple, upon a cleansed altar, resembling a place for sacrifice, sat a massive cauldron, its contents bubbling. Beside it, an arrogant figure lounged on a throne, the king of Uruk. What is he eating? Beef? A bovine form appeared within the boiling pot. As the image zoomed, Anu's face darkened, veins throbbing. He snapped the throne's armrest in fury, rising to his full height. A terrifying aura erupted, shaking the temple to its foundations, threatening collapse. How dare they? The Lord of Heaven was enraged. Mortals killed Gugalana and cooked him. What an abomination! What's happening? Lord Anu is furious. Who could have angered him? The other gods watched in shock as the supreme temple radiated a power that warped the very air. Weaker deities froze, paralyzed with fear, like prey before a predator. Who dared provoke the head of our pantheon? I haven't seen him this angry in ages. Meanwhile, within a certain temple, passionate sounds abruptly ceased. The eruption of divine wrath sent its inhabitants into a panic. Ishtar, a goddess of irresistible beauty, fled in disarray. Though uncertain of the cause, she knew to cease her activities. Arriving at the main temple, she found it empty. Has Lord Anu descended? Anu hasn't visited the mortal realm in centuries. Why now? Did some fool mortal offend him? But how? How could a human provoke such rage? The gods buzzed with speculation, then raced to earth to investigate. Anu, the sky god, arrived over Uruk, his icy gaze surveying the city. Humans trembled beneath his power, fear gripping their hearts, stealing their breath. One by one, they began to kneel. Who authorized this subservience? The quiet, yet absolute, command echoed in every ear, halting their descent. The voice imbued the people of Uruk with courage, their fear replaced by determination, defiance. They dared to meet the chief god's gaze, earning his grudging admiration, mixed with rage. His wrathful eyes fixed upon Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, who, unfazed, continued to devour a piece of meat. Such arrogance! Does he not grasp what I am? Is he blind to my power? How can he maintain such composure? I am Anu, sky god. The earth-shaking voice reverberated. He raised his staff, its light dispelling the storm clouds, reigniting the stars in a brilliant, beautiful, and terrifying night sky. Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, do you know? Nope. Before Anu could finish, Gilgamesh interrupted, twisting his neck as he rose. A sinister smile played on his lips, his crimson eyes casting a fierce light that eclipsed the stars. Could you please come down here? I'm tired of looking up.